In other news that we're following for you, with Donald Trump's attacks on academia, Europe's seeing an opportunity. The president of the European Commission attending a forum at the Paris's Sorbonne University where she pledged 500 million euros for a fund to lure researchers to this side of the Atlantic. France's president in attendance, Emmanuel Macron, chipping in another 100 million. Charlie James has more.
Europe wants you. That was the message to U.S.-based scientists at the Choose Europe for Science event in Paris. The continent's goal is to attract researchers who are disgruntled over U.S. science policy under President Donald Trump. And the European Commission is putting its money where its mouth is.
Science is an investment, and we need to offer the right incentives. This is why I can announce that we will put forward a new 500 million euro package for 2025 to 2027 to make Europe a magnet for researchers.
Von der Leyen also called it a miscalculation to question the role of science in today's world, a thinly veiled reference to the political and financial pressure Donald Trump is putting on American universities and research facilities. Trump's proposed budget for fiscal year 2026 calls for unprecedented scientific funding reductions, a 56% cut for the National Science Foundation, and slashing the National Institutes of Health budget by about 40%. At the event, French President Emmanuel Macron called Trump's targeting an error.
Let's cherish free and open science and reject a diktat that would mean a government can say it's forbidden to research this or that.
Macron promising an additional 100 million euros from France to attract foreign researchers. While EU countries can offer competitive research infrastructure and high quality of life, salaries lag behind U.S. levels. This investment aims to close that gap during a rare opportunity to lure top science talent to European shores.
And for more, let's cross to Brussels. Maria Leptin is president of the European Research Council. Thank you for being with us here on France 24.
Hi. Yes, good to be here.
So this conference at the Sorbonne, which you attended, this pledge of money, what's it about? How many researchers do you think you're going to lure? Is it Americans you're seeking? Is it to get Europeans who go to America because it's more lucrative over there to come back? What is the plan?
Well, let me first explain that the ERC, which was founded in 2007 to fund individual researchers' best ideas, researcher-driven ideas, based only on excellence, that the ERC was founded with the idea of being very attractive to top talent, both at home and abroad. So it's always been the idea of the ERC to be very attractive to researchers. Now, of course, that comes into its own once again when we need to help our colleagues in the US who are affected by these terrible cuts. So yes, the U.S. colleagues who are losing their jobs are probably contenders for our grants. They would have been anyway. We've already offered top-up. But like everything, like everyone who applies at the ERC, winning is based on competition, and the competition will be open to all.
And just to be clear, where would these researchers work?
They would work at EU research institutions, universities, or research labs. So that is a condition. The money goes to, is administered via European institutions. It is sufficient, however, to spend at least 50% of one's time in Europe, so double affiliations are possible, and that, of course, may make it particularly attractive for colleagues in the US to consider this now, because relocating completely a research lab or a family is, of course, not easily done from one day to the next. So, but the research, the funding will be administered through a European research institution.
Now, there were some eyebrows raised here in France when they heard, and we heard a clip of the French President Emmanuel Macron earlier, because there's a feeling, if you speak to people who are in research in academia in France, that there's been an erosion of the budgets over the last 2 decades. It's not just under this president, but all of his predecessors as well. And that compared to the United States, it's still drastically underfunded academia in France. Does Emmanuel Macron signal that there's going to be a 180-degree turn when it comes to funding universities?
I think he has heard the critique from people who's trying to attract, also with regard to salaries. So he made some positive noises. Now, at the EU level, which is, of course, what I represent, I'm very glad to say there's not been an erosion. There has been an increase. And of course, we are extremely happy that President von der Leyen has said multiple times that she is putting research at the heart of European competitiveness. And I think this will be heard. I'm hoping this will be heard generally. And you know, that's the good message I'm taking home today, and we're extremely happy about that. And I think it shows great foresight and insight.
The National Institute for Health in the United States, we think that research in the U.S. is somehow always privately funded, but the National Institute for Health, which is a public organization, its budget, $47 billion. It's huge. If there are 40% cuts, that's not good news for anybody.
No, it's actually inconceivable. It's hard to believe that this is happening, and I can only hope that with the strong statements that the U.S. universities are now putting out, and it goes really across the board, that rationality will eventually prevail again. I mean, it is really a case of cutting off your nose to spite your face. It damages the leading position of the U.S. in research on all fronts, and I cannot believe that they will stick with this. So the huge budget, you say, yes, it's a huge budget. It is indeed. But remember, if we're comparing this to national budgets, we have all the national budgets put together in Europe. So we are competitive. We could be more competitive, of course.
Does it match that sum that I mentioned, $47 billion?
Well, it's the NIH. It's very hard to compare these numbers because the NIH is only, as the name says, the life sciences, but it's all of the US. Whereas here, you know, we don't have anything comparable. Most European, we have a few granting agencies that fund life sciences, but most European agencies fund across the board. So these numbers are very difficult to compare. You can, of course, compare the total budget that the US spends compared to the total budget that the total spending in Europe on research and innovation, and there we're lagging behind. But it's good to hear that governments are considering to do some catching up there.
Mary Leptin, you're trained as a molecular biologist and worked on immunology. You said a minute ago something about a return to rationality. How do you explain the irrationality that pervades the fact that there is a bit of an attack on science, that the Secretary of Health in the U.S. is skeptical when it comes to vaccines? How do you explain, it's not about one person or one government, that there's this whiff of anti-science?
I have to say, I cannot begin to explain it, and I have not heard any good explanations. No, it would be speculation, and I really cannot begin to understand how anybody can be so short-sighted and narrow-minded. I mean, research serves us all, and we know it. So there's no sense in it.
There's no sense in it, you're saying. At this point in time, again, there's going to be real-world consequences if suddenly there's a halt to funding in key areas, in particular areas in what you work on, things like immunology.
Yes. Yes, of course there is. But, you know, research doesn't stop. It's a terrible hiatus, but research elsewhere in the world goes on. Even research in the US will go on. It's damaging, and one must hope that there are no real lasting damaging actions like losing massive data. You know, there are this was also touched upon today. The collection of data takes time, is expensive, and they have to be kept in databases. And if they are endangered, for example, longitudinal studies on the causes of obesity and cures for obesity, if those are stopped and the data are lost, it's decades of work that is lost and potential for cures. And that is short-sighted, and that could be long-lasting. I think slowing down is bad. You know, we need every bit of research that is being done, but it's not lethal. It's not fatal. Losing data that have been collected, losing databases, not sharing these data, that is fatal, and we must hope that must not.
One final question. You became president of the European Research Council, Mary Leptin, in 2021. It was still during the COVID era. What's changed? Again, this attitude towards science, in your experience, what's changed since then?
Well, people have got back into their labs, for one thing, which they couldn't during the peak COVID era. The other thing that's changed is, of course, that COVID has given us one of the very best examples for the value of blue sky science, for which you don't see an immediate need. So the reason why Europe was able to develop 2 COVID vaccines, one, the Pfizer one that was developed by BioNTech, and the other one, the Moderna one, that came from Oxford. These were 2 researchers who had previously been funded by the ERC for completely different work. And because of the freedom of research, because of the flexibility of their funds, and because they are citizens who themselves care and don't need to be told, they were able to swivel their research in no time at all to develop the vaccines. So that's, that's the silver lining from COVID. And it also has demonstrated the value of sharing data worldwide, because that's what enabled us also to get this vaccine so fast and to understand the spread of the disease.
All right. I want to thank you so much, Mary Leptin, for being with us from Brussels. Stay with us. There's much more to come, more news, plus today's business and sports.